Two Worlds is a French comedy film released in the year 2007. The plot of the film centers on an ordinary painting restorer, REMY BASSANO, who is transported to a parallel world known as BASSANO, where he's considered the promised savior by its oppressed inhabitants. At first, Remy is confused about the sudden time travel, but soon he embarks on epic adventures and discovers unsuspected inner resources, liberating the primitive tribe enslaved by a warlord. The film starts with the description of a quite strange and gruesome world of BASSANO, where a tribe is ruled by a cruel leader, Zotan, who oppresses the inhabitants. The troubled inhabitants wait for a savior who will pull them out of their misery and bring peace to their lives. The scene cuts to a small Parisian artist named Remy BASSANO playing cards with his kids, Theo and Lisa. As his wife, Lucille, takes the kids for a bath, Remy experiences a strange phenomenon in which a box moves from its place magically. However, he doesn't give it much thought and goes to have dinner with his family. Lucille tells him that he has to return to Barcelona for a meeting with some NGOs to redistribute the products in poor countries. Remy doesn't like the idea of his wife leaving the family alone and expresses displeasure about it. When Lucille asks him to accompany her, Remy straightaway refuses. On the other hand, the oppressed tribe in the parallel world are waiting for their savior to arrive. Back to Remy, he once again experiences something weird. This time he feels himself sinking into the couch. Surprised, he gets up and tells Lucille about it, but she doesn't believe him. He then curiously asks her about her travel partner. Lucille tells him that her colleague, Antoine Geller, is accompanying her. Since Lucille mentions Antoine and praises his smartness and generosity frequently, Remy feels jealous. At night, Remy insists on his wife making love, but she brushes him off. Poor Remy. In the parallel world, the villagers wait for their king's arrival and make preparations for his arrival. At the same time, Remy finds himself sinking into his bed, and he wakes up surprised. The next morning, before work, Remy catches some coffee to keep himself from hallucinating. A woman named Delphine finds him in the coffee shop and offers him some work related to art. Remy takes her to a studio across the road where she explains to him that a painting needs restoration as it is quite damaged. Moments later, Lucille drops Theo and Lisa at the studio so she can go to work. Although Remy hesitates, Lucille leaves him with no other choice. Remy finds it difficult to focus as Theo makes a mess of his studio and ends up painting Lisa's face. Lucille arrives back after a few hours and the entire family leaves for dinner. However, amidst the chaos, Remy mistakenly leaves the faucets running. Soon enough, Remy's entire studio floods with water, and all his valuable paintings are ruined. While saving a few of them, Remy dives into the water and ends up slipping into the parallel world of BASSANO. Confused, he emerges from a lake with his valuable paintings and is puzzled to see the ancient surroundings. When the villagers see him, they consider him their savior, who has brought sacred images with him. As they rush towards him, Remy gets frightened and dives back into the lake, emerging back into his studio. Seeing his miserable state, the rescue team escorts him out of the studio, where he meets Delphine, who gave him a task the day before. Bewildered, she asks Remy about her painting and is relieved to find out that Remy saved it. He returns home and expresses his bewilderment to Lucille. However, Lucille uses the wrong timing and confesses that she's in love with Antoine and wants a divorce. She explains that Antoine gives her all the attention she desires, which is lacking in their marriage. Remy, who is already upset about his studio, is even more devastated at this revelation. But despite being sorry, Lucille blames Remy for suspecting her so much that she couldn't stop thinking about Antoine. Being a noble man, Remy behaves decently in front of Antoine and agrees to leave Lucille. After Antoine leaves, he goes to his parents' house and informs them that his upcoming divorce and the destruction of the studio. As Remy goes to the kitchen to fetch some coffee, he notices his cat frozen in the air. All of a sudden, Remy starts plunging into the floor, and he travels in time, dropping into the parallel world with a tumbler of coffee. Upon arriving in the unusual world, he's shocked to see a group of people slaughtering an animal for a feast. Scared, he runs away into a cave, screaming for help. Inside the cave, he's bitten by something. Delirious, he tries to flee and is propelled back into his own world fiercely. His parents are startled by the explosion. They enter the kitchen only to find Remy buried under the ruins. Remy tries to tell them what just happened, but he doesn't find the right words. Certain that no one would believe him, he just keeps quiet. I mean, I would too. Later, he goes to a doctor to have his skull checked. The doctor tells him that there's no fracture. However, the bite mark on his neck looks troublesome. Remy decides to talk to the doctor about his unusual time traveling, and as you'd expect, the doctor doesn't take Remy seriously and sends him home. The following day, he goes to his studio only to find that his insurance is inadequate. His clients are filing suits against him, and his landlord is evicting him from the building. While answering the prosecutors, Remy suddenly sinks into the floor and emerges into Begamani, where he's hailed as a king and asked to show his strength to the enemies. Upon much insistence, Remy attempts to fly, but ends up falling and smashing his face. When the inhabitants of the place start calling Remy Master, he gets confused. Considering him a savior from the other world who has come to the rescue, the oppressed believe he will kill Zotan, the cannibal tyrant. They take Remy to the top of a building and show him Zotan's cavern, where his tribe lives. They instruct him to pierce Zotan's heart and destroy his village. Remy is clueless about the situation and tells them that he's unable to do the job. He explains that he's just an ordinary painting restorer with tons of problems, requesting them to let him go. This infuriates the oppressed tribe, and they threaten to drop him from the building top if he doesn't save them. Seeing no other option, Remy agrees to help them, and as a result, he's taken into a secluded room. Inside the room, when Remy touches a watermelon, he slips back into the real world. Ecstatic, he asks the time from the lawyer standing next to him and becomes certain that he's traveling in time. He then takes his friend Serge aside and tells him that he is wildly projected into another space repeatedly. Just then, their conversation gets interrupted when Delphine shows up, asking Remy if he salvaged her painting. Remy hesitantly asks her for some more time. Delphine comforts him, telling him that she came by to ask how he was doing. Remy's touched by her kindness and asks her to meet with him within a week. Remy then goes to a library to find a book related to Begamani or Zotan. The librarian fails to find him anything related to it. Dejected, Remy returns home and tells Lucille that he decided to change jobs. When he tells her that he's sick of painting, Lucille expresses her concern for him by telling him that she loved his job. The scene shifts to the Bagamanians calling their savior. Remy shows up in the casket and takes the people of the village to the other side, which according to the ancestors will cause a storm if more than one person sets a foot. Remy dismisses all the superstitions and takes the villagers to the other side. Upon entering a forest, Zotan's men stop them, warning them that a lightning storm will strike them. Remy stands up for his people, declaring himself their chief. A sacred war starts and Remy bravely combats and overpowers them. Soon, Remy finds out that everyone is supposed to eat a bite of the soldier whom Remy just killed. Remy is shocked to hear this custom and denies following it any longer. Just then, he finds out that Zotan is heading to them with his troop to wage war. Remy slides back to his world and goes to a library, buying books to learn how to fight a war. He starts learning the tricks and techniques to combat in a war, whilst ignoring his family. He keeps sliding back and forth between the two worlds, teaching the slaves all the techniques to win the war against the wild tyrant. He even finds a girlfriend named Kara, and asks his henchmen to arrange a group of girls for him so that he can enjoy the night before the Great War. As the girls try to seduce him, Remy is amused, but he soon starts missing Lucille. He speaks his heart out to the girls, telling them how Lucille rejected him and went to another guy. It turns out that Remy was never able to find a place of his own, as he's the 7th child out of 8. By the time he arrived, all the roles in his family were taken, and he became a very suppressed, apologetic child. Suddenly, Theo starts calling Remy, and he slides back to his world to comfort him. At night, he prepares himself for the war by practicing some moves and ends up ripping apart the refrigerator door with his sword. While sleeping, he suddenly gets swallowed up into the couch and emerges in the middle of the war unprepared. He rushes to his territory as the sun goes down and prepares to fight further. In the morning, he wakes up the sleeping opponents and challenges them to a fight. As the sleeping opponents wake up, they furiously charge at Remy, but he hides inside a tree bark after calling upon his army to tackle the opponents. The oppressed tribe shower the Zotanians with arrows, and a tough battle ensues between the two tribes. Moments after the fight, the Zotanians are defeated, and the oppressed tribe is liberated. Remy decides to build the village into a kingdom, and he starts working on it, guiding the villagers on how to construct the buildings and roads. Soon, the entire village is under construction, and Remy takes pride in everything he did. He realizes that this was the hidden potential he had in him since childhood. He embarks on amazing adventures, pulling out the tribe from old times to a modern lifestyle. After liberating the tribe, he wakes up on his couch and finds his children waiting next to him. Startled, he gets up to make them lunch, but the kids are afraid to see his long beard. Just then, Lucille enters the house with Antoine and is worried to see the kids crying. Remy rushes to the bathroom to shave his beard. Lucille asks him if Antoine can stay at the house with his housemates, but Remy doesn't give a proper answer. When he leaves the house, Antoine bumps into him, requesting that Remy find a new place to live as soon as possible, making Remy furious. Lucille is quite shocked to see this change in her ex-husband. Remy then walks to his studio and sternly tells his lawyers that he's changing his job. Since Remy used to be quite submissive, everyone's surprised to see his dominant side. He then goes to the community office to get his job profession changed. When he's asked about his interests, he explains that he made a city, waged a war, and hence can work as an architect and a politician. The worker is exasperated by Remy's exaggerated claims and offers him a job handing out flyers for an Indian restaurant. During the job, Remy gets annoyed and throws away all the flyers, flunking the job. He slides back to Begameni to his girlfriend, wishing that he stays in the kingdom forever. Later, while ruling over the tribe, one of the villagers tells him that he's fed up with his leadership. Remy gets infuriated and gets him dismissed. Suddenly, other people also start protesting that they want Zotan back. They stop working on building the kingdom and claim that they are worked up. When Remy defies their claims, everyone starts mocking him, making it clear that they're sick of him. Terrified, Remy runs away and is driven out of the kingdom by the people. He slides back into his own world and goes to his friend Serge, requesting him to lend him an empty studio. In the new studio, he starts working on restoring Delphine's painting. The following morning, Lucille shows up and hands him the sword she found under the couch. However, their conversation gets interrupted when Delphine arrives. Remy shows her the restored painting and asks her out on a date. After dinner, just when the two of them are kissing, Remy sinks back into Begamani and is asked to fight Zotan directly. Remy ends up killing Zotan and is once again hailed as a king. Just then, he finds out that he'll be eaten by everyone so that they can assimilate his strength. Scared, Remy starts running away from them. Meanwhile, Delphine struggles to wake him up and escorts him to a hospital. Suddenly, Remy wakes up after a burning piece of wood is thrown onto the water in Begamani. Upon gaining his wits, he realizes that his time matches that of the doctor. He gets elated, realizing that this phenomenon of time traveling is finally over. Ecstatic, he runs away from the ICU and finds his family waiting for him, who thought that Remy was going to die. After meeting them, he sees Lucille and Delphine in the hospital corridor. Delphine leaves them alone, giving them time to patch up. However, Remy refuses to get back with Lucille despite her insistence. 47 days later, he reunites with Lucille and his kids in Barcelona, and the family gets back together happily. The film ends with Remy's statue being put up in Begameni. Well, that's the end of the video. If you made it to the end and enjoyed the video, please leave a like and also subscribe to the channel to never miss out on future videos from Dude Recaps.